Good morning. We are going to do the second part here of our 8-3 notes. There's only 3 examples. I'm probably going to add one more to give you a fourth. So this is going to require your calculator to be in the same setting again. So again, to repeat those steps, hit the second button. I'm sorry, don't do that at all. Hit mode, and then go down to the third row, and your degree should be highlighted. If it's not, take your cursor with your arrow pad, go down to hover it over degree, hit enter, and then just hit second quit and get out of that. Okay, so again, your calculator needs to be in degrees, not radians. That'll alleviate a lot of issues here at the beginning. So this is a little bit different because before, in the first half, you were finding a side length. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to be asked to find an angle. So for the next 2 examples, they're asking you to find the measure of angle x. So, I gave you 2 rules in the first chapter, in the first half of this, and I said that you always stand at the angle you're given. Well, now you're going to do the same thing. I mean, you're not given an angle, but you're going to stand at the angle at which you want to find. Okay, so they're asking for the measure of angle x. I'm going to stand at angle x. And then my second rule was to always label the hypotenuse first. And the hypotenuse in this case is going to be hx, which is 10. And that was obviously labeled with a value, so I'm interested in it. Okay. And then as I'm standing at angle x, 6 is opposite of me. Okay. xb would be my adjacent side. I don't care about it. So I'm going to use a trig function that deals with opposite over hypotenuse, or I'm sorry, opposite and hypotenuse, which I kind of gave away the answer to you now. If I write out the word SOHCAHTOA, again, I want the trig function that will deal with the opposite and hypotenuse. So hopefully by now you're at least comfortable in figuring out what trig function to use in setting this up. So it's going to be, now this is where it gets tricky, and this is where it's different from the first half of these notes. You always take the trig function of the angle, but the problem is you don't know what the angle is. So we're going to call it the sine of x, okay, is equal to opposite, which is 6 over 10. Now, when we're in traditional classroom settings, this confuses students, so it's probably going to be tricky when I explain this completely online here, but here's what we do, and this is very hard for kids to understand, but when you're taking the sine, the cosine, or the tangent of anything, it's an operation. So just like when you add, if you're doing addition, the inverse of that is subtraction. When you're doing multiplication, the inverse of that is division, right? And then if you have division, the inverse of that is multiplication, and then subtraction, the inverse is addition. Operations undo each other. Okay, every operation has an inverse. These trig functions operate the exact same way. Okay, so if I'm taking the sine of angle x, to undo sine being done to both sides, I'm going to take the sine inverse. Okay, so the sine to the -1 is the inverse of sine. I know this is a lot, I know this is confusing, but just bear with me, okay? If I'm taking the sine of angle x, and I take the inverse sine, the sines in general undo themselves, and you are left with simply just x. Now, it's an equation. The age-old additive of if what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Well, then I have to take the sine inverse of 6 over 10. Okay? So that's all the algebra. You're just taking the inverse operation of sine to both sides to undo it. Okay? Now, you're done algebraically. For you to solve this, you simply go to your calculator. Okay, give it a hit clear, hit a fresh screen, make sure it's obviously turned on. And if you locate, don't press anything, but if you locate your sine, cosine, and tangent functions, if you look right above them in blue, or possibly a different color, but right above the word sine is sine -1. Right above cosine is cosine -1. Right above tangent is tangent -1. Okay, so to activate the inverse, now you're going to type, the first thing you're going to hit is second sine, and then it's going to open up a parenthesis. You just type in 6, division button 10, close that parenthesis and hit enter, and that will give you your answer of 36.5 36.86. If you want to round it to 36.9, that's fine. Okay. Oops. But that is how you perform that. Okay. Again, I know it's a lot. We're going to do at least 2 more of these. The algebra is not challenging. It's just I know that what you guys struggle with is you don't really understand what's going on. And the thing to understand is that you're just simply undoing the trig function by using the trig inverse. Okay, so the same directions apply to example B. All right, they want you to find the angle x, find the measure of angle x. So you're going to stand there. So rule 1, stand at the angle you're either given now or looking for. And then rule 2 was to label the hypotenuse. Well, angle M is my right angle, opposite of that is 20. So there's my hypotenuse. As I stand here, MN is opposite. I don't care about it. It wasn't marked at all. 15 is adjacent to me. So I need to find the trig function that deals with adjacent and hypotenuse. It's not sine, adjacent, hypotenuse, it's cosine. So here we go. The cosine of the angle is an unknown, it is x, is equal to, it's spelled AH, so the adjacent 15 goes on top, 20 is the hypotenuse, it goes on the bottom. So there's your setup. Okay, now, to solve this thing, currently, you think back to like when you first ever solved an equation, the first question was what's being done to x, right? And it would be, like for example, you have x plus 5 equals 10. And then your teacher would say, what's being done to x? And you would say, x is being added to 5. Well, how do you undo it adding to 5? You subtract 5 from both sides, and now you're left with x by itself to get 5. It's the same thing, okay? So what's being done to x? Well, for the lack of better words, it's being cosigned, okay? Well, how do you undo cosine? You just take the cosine inverse of both sides. Right? These cosines just clear out, and you're left with just x. And then in your calculator, clear it, and then go ahead and hit second cosine. So you should have cos negative 1 with an open parenthesis on your screen. Type in 15 division button 20. Close that parenthesis and hit enter. And my calculator gave me 41.409. Again, round it to the nearest tenth, if you will. It's just 41.1. I'm sorry, 41.4. Okay? So there's 2. Now this would be the point in a lesson where I would say, all right, do the next one on your own. So if I were you, I would hit pause, take a shot at it, and do everything. Type it in your calculator, try and do the whole thing on your own, and then compare it to what I get. Okay? So you should be coming back from a paused attempt, so you should be really checking over your answers, not necessarily doing this with me. You should be comparing to what I got to what you got. Okay, so here we go. We got to find the measurement of angle y. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stand at angle y. Okay, T is my right angle, which means that this is my hypotenuse, and for us, it was not marked, so I don't care about the hypotenuse at all. If I'm standing here, this is opposite of where I'm standing, and the 41 is adjacent to where I'm standing. So, TOA, okay? Well, what trig function deals with opposite and adjacent? That's tangent. So hopefully you chose the correct trig function. I'll clean up my picture a little bit. So I want the tangent. Now I'm going to call it x. You could call it y. You can call it anything. It's just the tangent of the unknown angle. Okay, so the tangent of x is equal to, and TOA is spelled OA, so 100 over 41. Okay. I want to undo or get x by itself, so I'm going to take the tan inverse of both sides. And when I do that, those cancel, leaving me with x is equal to, and in your calculator you should clear and you should hit second tan. So you should have, your calculator should currently read tan to the -1, open parenthesis, and type in 100 divided by 41, close your parenthesis, and it should give you, I think the directions said round to the nearest degree. So your calculator gives you roughly this. When you round that to the nearest degree, it would be 68 degrees. Okay, so hopefully you got that right. If not, obviously email me with any questions. Let's go ahead and just take a shot at one more here. Let's just draw a quick picture. Let's triangle A, B, C. Let's say we want to find angle C, and this is 12, and this is 3. Okay, so if I want you to find angle C, you're standing here. Okay, this is my hypotenuse. 3 is opposite of me. So the trig function that I will use is going to be the sine, because it is SOHCAHTOA, which is SOH, and that is opposite and hypotenuse. So I'm going to take the sine of angle X is equal to opposite, which is 3, over hypotenuse, which is 12. Okay, to solve this, I want to undo the sine being done. So I'm going to take the sine inverse of both sides. These cancel. So I really have X is equal to the sine inverse of 3 over 12. So I'm going to hit second sine, 3 division button, 12. And when I do that, my calculator gave me 14.477. So if I said to round to the nearest tenth, it would simply be 14.